So I have a really big secret to tell you. Non-writers read books. Welcome to How to Write Good. I am your host, Daniel Poppie. You can find out more about me at danielpoppie.com. If it is your first time here, How to Write Good is a writing podcast that seeks to find principles and advice that can be applied across a broad range of writing situations. If you've been here before, don't forget to subscribe, hit that like button below, and share. So in my many long journeyings, if journeyings is a word, in my many years of writing, or my few years of writing, if you're over the age of 60 and you see however long I've written as a short period, I've met writers who see themselves as artists. And I'm not necessarily knocking any writer who sees themselves as artists. I'm just painting a picture of what type of people I've seen in the writing world. So I've seen writers who see themselves as artists, and they think they are and must create the perfect writing. Right? They think they are the perfect writer in some sense, and they think they must create the perfect writing. At one point, I made a podcast episode that talked about how your writing is not perfect. The perfect writing does not exist, and I got a response from one writer who essentially disagreed with me, and he's like, well, your writing might not be perfect, but, I make mine perfect. I find the exact right words. And because I'm an artist, I'm not just a writer, I'm an artist. And these people who are artists, they are writers who will not accept anything but perfection, despite the fact that you cannot write anything perfectly, despite the fact that you cannot create anything perfectly. They want to write everything perfectly. They see themselves as writers. They see artists, they see themselves as set apart. It is a type of elitism. And they only write for these highfalutin artists, only write for all those smart people that exist in the world. But guess what? Most people who live in the world are not writers. Most people have an understanding of writing. Right, especially in our society, most people do understand writing to a certain degree, but they do not understand, and they don't want to understand the minutia of writing. Right, they do not get annoyed by the same things you get annoyed with. Like, they don't get annoyed by those things. They don't get annoyed by the words that people use. Oftentimes, they'll just read the words and they'll understand the words and they'll move forward. And if those words can convey a specific, often entertaining idea to people, to that person, then they're good with it. They probably don't like Shakespeare. Gasp, right? That's terrible. That's probably the worst thing that's ever happened in the world. The thing about writing and Shakespeare is kind of interesting because Shakespeare was a playwright. And most people who are writing are not playwrights, so they're going to write differently than Shakespeare. They're going to approach things differently than Shakespeare. But that's an aside. That's beside the point. Most people do not like Shakespeare. Most people are not writers. If you're someone who's caught up and you're like, oh, I like this writing thing, I like that writing thing, you're just obsessed with it. The truth is that the majority of people are not obsessed with writing. There are a lot of people who are obsessed with writing because if you have 7 billion people, you're bound to have quite a few who are obsessed with writing. You'd probably be able to fill a couple stadiums, right? Or more. You'd probably be able to fill quite a few stadiums of people obsessed with writing. But at the same time, the most of the people who are reading, most of the people who are going out trying to find books, they're just trying to find entertainment. They're trying to find a story that catches them up and they can just be like, yeah, this is awesome, I really enjoy it. Most people are not going to be as involved in the writing process or as involved in writing as you are. And I think that you are kind of a fool if you are going to decide that you're going to write only for a select group of people, these writers, these special individuals who are smarter than everybody else, right? Not because there aren't enough writers, but because your impact will be significantly less, right? If you do decide that you're going to write for more than just writers, your impact will be significantly larger. If you write for everyone, just think about that. If you write for everybody who can understand what you're writing, it's going to be a lot larger group. I think it's good, and I think it's important as writers to be humble. I think it is important to think, I am not the best writer in the world. I am not going to change the world. I am going to write. I am going to do my best in writing, and if it is not the best of all time, that is okay. I think that people walk into writing, especially young people, and I think people who get older just get over this idea generally. I think people walk into writing, and they think, oh, I'm going to write the best, one of the best books ever. It's going to be the top 100 in the English language. And the truth is that it's very unlikely that you're going to do that. There's a lot of things that have to go into doing that specific thing. It's very unlikely that you're going to do that. Now, one of the reasons it's unlikely is because you're not experienced enough. If you work your butt off, I'm sure that you can. After you're working your butt off, but it's not some part of you that makes that happen. It's not some part of you that makes you better, if that makes sense. It's not some inherent trait you have. It's that you worked your butt off. But I think that you should write books for regular people, because it shows you that just because you have all these different ideas and just because you see yourself as a writer doesn't mean that you don't have to think about who you're writing to. Doesn't mean that you don't have to think about who your audience is and how they're going to respond to your writing and what you should do, etc. Some people might disagree with me, and they might be like, well, I'll never be able to write all these sophisticated or really, really good books. I'm never going to be able to write the next huge American novel if I just stick with these lower level entertaining things that people will like. I don't think that's true. There's been a lot of writers throughout history who have written stuff that a lot of people like. It's a mass appeal type of thing. And then on the side, they're writing their book they really love. They're writing that passion piece. And you can do the same thing. You do need to eat. I think that every writer should strive to try to live off of the work if they're passionate enough about it. You do need to eat. Figure out a way to eat, and you can always do that great work on the side. You can always do the stuff you're really passionate about on the side as well. But again, it goes back to humility. Just be humble. You're not God's gift to mankind, right? None of us are. We're all just people. We're all just moving forward. There's so many other people who do so many other things, and if you tried to do what they did, you'd look like a fool. And I think it's important to remember that. You do something that is extraneous. You do something that's extra. You do something that's, if you want to use it in a logical term, accidental to reality, to living. And I think if you remember that and you just stay humble, it's very helpful. And I think if you don't just try to reach one group, but you say, hey, I can talk to a lot more people if I write differently. And you can always write books, or you can always try new things out. You can always experiment, and I think that's important. But I think it's good to remember that the majority of people, if you can connect to the majority of people, you can have a huge impact than if you don't. If you enjoyed this podcast and you want to support me, there's really one simple thing you can do. You can go to danielpoppie.com/newsletter and sign up for my newsletter. And when you sign up, you'll actually be able to get access to my publication roadmap. So that's everything I have planned for pretty much every project I have into the next decade. Again, that is danielpoppie.com/newsletter. You can also find the link below.